So Colombia held congressional and primary elections on Sunday. Colombia's elections are like the street addresses here. They look confusing, but are easy to understand once you learn the system. Now, you had two different things going on. There were primary elections for the presidential race, but they don't work the way they do, for example, in the U.S. Then you have the legislative elections. Now, in the Colombian Senate, voters choose 100 senators by a national at-large vote, and 2 seats are reserved for indigenous communities. Voters can choose to vote in the indigenous ballot or the at-large ballot, but they can't vote in both. So you choose, okay, do I want to vote in the regular one, or do I want to vote for whoever is going to be the representative in the Senate of the indigenous people? The House of Representatives election is closer to what we would see in other jurisdictions with territorial representation. So 161 seats are voted by the department where you live, and a department's like a state or a province. And then Bogota gets representation separate from the Department of Cundinamarca. So Bogota's in Cundinamarca, but it has its own political identity as the capital. This representation is determined by population, similar to how it's done in the U.S. Then there are 10 seats reserved for victims of armed conflict, 1 for Colombians living abroad, 1 for inhabitants of San Andres and Providencia, the archipelago in the Caribbean, 1 more for indigenous communities, and 1 for Afro-descendant communities, which is more complicated than it sounds. So in Colombia, it's not like, oh, you look black, so you're Afro-descendant, or you did a 23andMe test or something. It is because you can go to somewhere like Cartagena and Cali and say, oh, there's black people everywhere. Well, it doesn't really work that way. In Colombia, you have groups like the Palenqueros. We made a documentary on them. You can take a click and look at that. It's really, their history is really fascinating. Or then you have communities that live in places like out in Chocó, where they have kind of a distinct ethnic identity than just being black and Colombian. So most people, if you were to come, let's say from the U.S. and you go, oh, they're black, they must be Afro-Colombian. It doesn't work that way. But there are people like, for example, the current vice president, Francia Marquez, is a leader from the Afro-descendant communities. And to some degree, they have culturally distinct identities. It's really hard to explain concisely, but there are groups that have that designation, and it just doesn't mean that you're Black Latino or something. It is a more limited or more explicit definition that's used down here. So also, whoever comes in second in the presidential election gets a Senate seat. There's another trick. If your political party gets less than 3% of the votes, you're left out of the Senate, even if you get more than 3%. So if you are attached to a party, you're dependent on your party getting at least 3% of the votes. Otherwise, you might get a bunch of votes, but you're still out. The seats are allocated based on how many votes your party got. And then there are also local complexities and differences that affect the allocation of House seats. Now, political parties can choose whether they want to have open or closed lists for congressional elections. And in an open list, you can vote for the person you like. If there's someone in the party that you don't like, you don't have to vote for him or her. In closed list, however, it's like, here's the party slate, and you have to vote for the party as a block. And then the party can then figure out, well, actually, they have to do this beforehand. They can figure out how to allocate the seats. But they have to do that. They can't like, okay, vote, then we'll figure it out. They have to have that allocation formula figured out before the election. Now, in the presidential primaries, there were 3 ballots. So the primaries are like, they're inter-party, so it's not like you're just voting for people in your party. There are 2 ways to get on the presidential ballot. You can do it by petition, where you go out and get a bunch of signatures. That's what Abelardo de la Espriella did, so he'll be on the ballot and does not have to go through the primary process. Then, let's suppose you're a candidate from a party or you're independent. You can join a pact with different parties and political actors. So you had three this past weekend. A centrist pack won by former Bogota Mayor Claudia Lopez. Then you had the Gran Consulta, which had more right-wing candidates, though some were more centrist. Paloma Valencia of the Centro Democrático Party won that. And on the left, you had a menagerie of candidates, a former guerrilla of the M19 group that the current president, Gustavo Petro, belongs to, a member of the Workers' Party, which is a Marxist group, and Daniel Quintero, the former mayor of Medellin, who, according to Medellin Daily El Colombiano, is already indicted and facing 43 separate investigations for corruption. The left's primary was won by former Senator Roy Barreras, who has been all over the place politically over his career. He seems to morph from right to center to left based on whatever the trend seems to be. Iván Cepeda, a close ally of left-wing President Gustavo Petro, already had his seat assured and so did not have to appear in the primary because the party had an internal primary, kind of like a caucus, which you see in Iowa or party convention. So he's the clear favorite of most citizens and political actors on the left. Barreras doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of beating Cepeda. The interesting thing, though not surprising, is how poorly Daniel Quintero did. He is so unpopular in his home city of Medellin that he moved to Bogota, and according to him, he and his family had no peace in the city where he made a ton of enemies during his term as mayor. Now, he's been insistent on running for president, even though he has no support, as we can see from these results. He has been very loud, insulting people on social media and calling the system corrupt for not letting him on the ballot because he didn't comply with the rules and requirements. He still manages to get on the ballot by going and finding sponsorship from a minor political party. And then he gets embarrassed. He got 227,279 votes behind Roy Barreras with 257,037 votes. Now, the news is what Paloma Valencia with Alvaro Uribe's party did. She got 3,236,286 votes. If you take out the runner-up, and these numbers are as of Monday, midday, so there might be some minor adjustments or somebody found some ballots or somebody contested a vote count somewhere. But if you take out the runner-up, Juan Daniel Oviedo, who had 1,255,510 votes, Valencia got more than the other 11 candidates put together. She has gotten herself a steamroller. Now, Abelardo de la Espriella submitted just over 5 million signatures on petitions, but over 3 million were invalidated. So he got on the ballot with just under 2 million signatures, 1,978,108. So more people turned out to vote for Paloma Valencia in a primary than signed Espriella's signatures. Now, Paloma Valencia, we did a video already on her. I had a hunch that this was going to happen. So once she kind of got the nod to be the candidate for Centro Democrático, we went ahead and did a piece to talk about, what she believes and what her platform is going to be. She's been in the Senate for a long time, and she seems to be kind of she's on the right, but kind of maybe a center-right candidate. She doesn't go off and do crazy stuff. Some of the other candidates, like Maria Fernanda Cabal, who go off and kind of say crazy things and like to play and battle with people on Twitter. She's not like that. So there's not a lot to really be offended at by her. Now, you might disagree with her policies, but you cannot really call her kind of a loose cannon, if you will. A surprise is what Juan Daniel Oviedo did. Now, here's a guy who, during the last administration of Iván Duque, ran the DANE. DANE is Colombia's it's like Dirección, I forget what the initials stand for, but Nacional de Estadística. So it's the Colombian Official Statistics Bureau, and it counts things like child nutrition and unemployment and how many people live in what department and what city. And he was widely respected for doing a good job there. He was on city council in Bogota. He's gay, but he's been on the right wing, but generally has been very well respected. Abelardo de la Espriella came out and insulted him a week ago, and all of the other candidates on the right and a lot of the candidates in the center also just universally got behind him and defended his honor and really condemned Espriella for being immature and kind of acting like a schoolyard bully. But he got a ton of votes, over almost 2 million. And it surprised a lot of the pundits. He kind of came out of nowhere, not out of nowhere. I mean, he's known, but I think a lot of people are making a statement for clean governance. Now, he's been very conciliatory towards Paloma Valencia, and already people are talking, if you read the dailies here, about him being the vice presidential candidate. On the other hand, he has expressed interest in wanting to be the mayor of Bogota, and if he was going to do that, if he became the vice president, he would have to resign, or he could just wait until the elections in 2 years to run for mayor of Bogota. But if he joins with Paloma Valencia and they become running mates, then that steamroller that I mentioned just got nitrous oxide. They would have to do something. They would have to really screw up to lose that election if they teamed up, in my opinion. And Paloma already is going to be the favorite, I believe. At least if I were to say not who I like, but who I think has the best odds of winning right now, I would give that to her. Now, Claudia Lopez, who's the former mayor of Bogota, she won the centrist primary, if you want to call it that. But there was only one other candidate, a lawyer. I've never heard of the guy. But anyway, so she did a pretty good job, in my opinion, as mayor of Bogota. It's interesting because you have in Colombia, which is one of the most politically conservative countries in Latin America, you have Claudia Lopez, who is lesbian and married. Her wife or spouse actually just lost her Senate seat. So she is married to a senator, but the senator just lost re-election. And of course, Oviedo is also part of the homosexual community, but that is not holding them back. That's not hurting them at all as they become mainstream candidates, and not far left candidates, not what in the U.S. people would call woke or part of any kind of super activist fringe group. But these are candidates that we're talking about on the center and on the right. So what does this mean for De La Espriella? Well, I think it already is going to put him on the defensive, but now you have the people that may have voted for him, and there are going to be people who still vote for him. But really, nobody so far has voted for him. People signed a petition that gets you on the ballot, but you know, when you sign a petition, you're not committing to anything. You're like, yeah, okay, fine. And you go out in the street. You're not running against anybody when you sign a commission. So far, nobody's voted for this guy. Now, he's made a lot of noise. He spent a lot of money. But Paloma Valencia, being part of Centro Democrático, which is also now the largest bloc in Congress, in the Senate, has an entire machine, has a whole political machine behind her. And not just that, De La Espriella is a political outsider, and a lot of the other political structures, it's very conceivable to see them get behind Paloma Valencia because, one, they just might agree with her policy. they might agree with her ideologically, but also there's going to be more benefit for them as parties and political actors when it comes to naming ministers and posts and cabinet posts and advisors and such. Now, what will probably happen first and second round will be that the first round, you're going to have 6 or 7 different candidates up there. You're going to have Claudia Lopez is in there, and Iván Cepeda and Paloma Valencia, and the top 2 go on to the runoff. Now, you could conceivably have Paloma Valencia and De La Espriella. So you're going to have 2 right-wing candidates, an insider versus an outsider, that go on to the second, the final round. That's possible. More likely what's going to happen is the left vote is going to be unified. And this is actually what happened last election. So they're going to be unified behind Cepeda. And then the right vote is going to be largely split between Paloma Valencia and De La Espriella. Whoever gets the most between anybody will then go on to the final round. So Colombia has a runoff. So the elections are May 31st. And if somebody gets more than 50% of the vote, they just win outright. If not, then the top 2 go on and they have another runoff in July, and then inauguration is in August. So the president's Pacto Histórico party is going to be the largest party in Congress with 26 seats, or about a fourth of the total. And let me be specific, in the Senate, they have 26 seats. They did something smart and worked to make a deal with the smaller leftist parties, and they held an internal primary, sort of like a political convention or caucus in the U.S. to select their candidate and consolidate support of the smaller parties so they don't dilute their presence. Now, former President Alvaro Uribe's party, Centro Democrático, also the party of Paloma Valencia, is the second largest in the Senate with 17 seats. And even though the Pacto Histórico won the largest block, almost all the other parties are center or right-wing parties. And so the left has about a quarter of Congress, which is well short. Now, there are a lot of political actors in there who are not really allied with anybody who will make a deal. So it's still possible. Let's suppose Cepeda won. It's still possible for him to go and get the support he needs by horse trading and that sort of political racketeering that people do to get the votes that they need. And so it's not like they couldn't get anything passed. But interestingly, Alvaro Uribe tried to get back to the Senate, but he lost. And it could be that his age combined with his scandals are catching up with him, and the older generation most loyal to him is aging out. Uribe has been mayor of Medellin. He's been governor of Antioquia. He's been president of Colombia for 2 terms. He's been senator. He's also held various government positions like Aerocivil, which is like the FAA of Colombia, the Civil Aviation Authority. But he and Iván Cepeda got into it. So let's see. They were battling because they were both in the Senate a few years back, and Uribe accused Cepeda of bribing prisoners to make false claims about him, or accuse him of crimes that he didn't commit. So the Supreme Court goes and investigates this, and it turns out the investigation found evidence that Uribe was guilty of actually what he had accused the other guy of doing. So Uribe denounces Cepeda and ends up with the charges against him. And they got enough evidence and they convicted him. So Alvaro Uribe was convicted. We covered that. Of course, you can read about it in Finance Colombia. But all of this, now he has his supporters, and there are people who are going to support him no matter what. But they're mostly old timers from who remember back in the day when he was president, and and other ranchers like him. He's from a cattle ranching family, and he does have that base, but it's not with younger voters, and it's not with people outside of that kind of hardcore group that's been with him forever. And so he's still very influential. He still has, he basically controls that political party. And he did some things. He could have, if he wanted to, set things up within his party for him to get the Senate. But I think that he wisely had other priorities, such as getting the next president. And basically, one of the byproducts, though, of his strategy is that he didn't make it. He just didn't get enough votes to return to the Senate. Jorge Robledo, who was a super left-wing former senator, tried to get back in the Senate. He also didn't make it. Angelica Lozano of the Green Party, who is Claudia Lopez's is it wife or spouse? Anyway, she lost her seat, so she's going to be out. Miguel Polo Polo, who's an interesting polemicist from Cartagena, was ousted Sunday. He's an interesting guy, a vocal right-wing politician. He got elected to one of the seats reserved for Afro-Colombians, but then resigned from that group and joined another one, the Community Council of Los Remedios. But they didn't get enough votes to qualify, so they lose their curul, as they say. They lose their CURUL. They lose their kind of standing. Remember, you need to get 3% of the votes. So to keep if your party doesn't, then you can win, but you're still out. So Hitler also lost. I'm not joking. This guy, he was also part of that same group. Hitler Rousseau Chavera Ovalle, who has a resume showing he has worked as a government bureaucrat and also seems to have published music on streaming platforms like Apple, and I think I saw him on Amazon. Well, he lost, so Hitler lost. And look, blame his parents for his name. I don't know anything about him. He may be a great guy, but he lost. So Hitler lost in Sunday's elections. Now, Abelardo de la Espriella has come out asking for a non-aggression pact from Paloma Valencia's campaign. And this is interesting because he's a big guy who likes to insult people himself. I think what he doesn't want is this whole political machinery of the Centro Democrático to turn against him. I know they've been doing opposition research, and they're going to have a bunch of stuff on him, too. And, I mean, he just got finished insulting Juan Daniel Oviedo for being gay, and everybody else just universally came out and denounced Espriella for that. He also has, through his career as a criminal defense lawyer, some interesting ties to organized crime groups and some big-time white-collar criminals. He's also asked for some, let's say, criminal-friendly policies. He wanted to do like an amnesty where they can pay 10% of their ill-gotten gains and maybe serve a tiny percentage of the jail time, and he thinks that they should be let free. But he's said that in the past. And I think as things heat up, these ties might come back to bite him. Now, what does this mean if you're an executive or investor with interest in Colombia? So Colombia's major business groups like Andi and Finalco have tired of the improvisation and capricious policies of the current administration. Now, left-wing Iván Cepeda seems more intelligent than the left-wing current president and would almost certainly be a better administrator, but would still work, in my estimation, to implement statist, anti-growth, left-wing populist policies that would sound like they are helping the poor, while actually making Colombia a more complicated place for both foreign investment and local entrepreneurship. Best thing that you can do to help the poor is give them a decent job. And to do that, you need job growth, and you need more jobs coming to the country and more jobs being created domestically through entrepreneurship and these new opportunities. But these don't come from the state. So that is the danger there when you have statist policies. Then, look, he's not Hugo Chavez. He's not Nicolas Maduro, but maybe conceivably like Argentina's Nestor and Cristina Kirchner or Spain's Pedro Sanchez. Now, some of you might like that. You may like Cristina or Sanchez, and that's probably fine, but you're probably not a multinational executive or institutional investor, I'll bet. Oil prices just passed $100 per barrel, and Gustavo Petro has shut down new petroleum activity during his administration, cutting Colombia off from that badly needed source of foreign currency. Meanwhile, he's broken Colombia's fiscal responsibility regulations by declaring an economic emergency and run sovereign debt up to record levels. On the other hand, De la Espriella is an unknown, unpredictable factor. He's a 47-year-old criminal defense lawyer. He has created this movement he calls Defensores de la Patria, or Defenders of the Homeland. And that's a play on words, as he's saying that they're a patriotic movement, but he's also a defense attorney. He's running on a tough on crime platform, but he spent his career defending high-profile criminals. Now, being a defense attorney is a legitimate profession, but still one has to ask, who have been your sponsors? Who has paid you? Where did you get your fortune? De la Espriella has defended Alvaro Uribe in his post-presidential legal troubles. He was gonna, I think at the beginning, he was gonna try to run in Uribe's party, but he realized that he wasn't going to get the party's official backing, because even though he's helped Uribe out, all of these career politicians like Paloma Valencia or Maria Fernanda Cabal, who I believe left the party actually kind of upset, but they weren't going to stand for this outsider to just swoop in and take control of the party when they had been toiling away inside of it for years. So he's also defended Alex Saab, the Colombian who the U.S. captured for being a major money launderer and bagman for Nicolas Maduro. He's defended David Murcia Guzman, a notorious pyramid scheme scammer in Colombia, the DMG scandal, where he basically built people out of millions in regular Colombians. He really built this pyramid scheme using social media. So De la Espriella has represented former Fedegan president. Fedegan is the ranchers kind of industry group, the Cattle Ranchers Association. Their former president, Jorge Visbal Martelo, who was on the run for being a paraco, or a paraco is a slang word. It's kind of an insult, but it's a slang word for being a paramilitary. So in Colombia, paramilitaries are right-wing. In the press, well, when they say death squad, they're usually really talking about more what happened up in Central America. But basically, these groups that started out, they were called AUC Autodefensas, and they started out as kind of like vigilante groups, but then they morphed into mafias, and they're still around, and they're basically rural-based mafias. And so this guy, the head of the Cattle Ranchers Association, was mixed up with them, and so he's been on the run. He just got arrested. He's defended supervillain Salvatore Mancuso, who's another paramilitary mafia guy. Mancuso's a super big, I mean, if you could get in real life close to a supervillain out of like a Batman movie or something like that, Salvador Mancuso would be this guy. And his name, it's like his nom de guerra. It's like his he wasn't born with this Italian name. But they take on these names and they call themselves things like that. But the mafia guy says that he's friends with De la Espriella since they were kids, so they're lifelong friends. He has defended defrocked judge Jorge Pretelt, the head of the Cartel de Toga. We just did an article on that. You should take a look at Finance Colombia and read. Another one of these corrupt judges, went to jail for this corruption racket. And Rocio Arias, another parapolitica, as they call. So parapolitics in Colombia is if you are a politician funded by or involved with the paracos or the paramilitaries, then they call that's illegal, and that's called, it's like having mafia ties near a candidate, and that's called parapolitica. And so Rocio Arias was involved in that, and he defended her. And so let's be fair. He's worked pro bono for the family of Rosa Elvira Celi, who was a victim of a horrible crime in Bogota back in 2012. And in that case, he was not the defense attorney, but went after the attacker, who ended up getting 48 years in prison. And don't even want to say what happened to that victim. You can go look it up if you're interested in that kind of thing. It was pretty horrific, but it led to Colombia passing a special femicide law for homicide against women that goes above and beyond simple homicide as a crime. He defended Natalia. He didn't defend her, but he represented Natalia Ponce de Leon, a victim of an acid attack, which for a while was a thing in Colombia. I don't know where this came from. It seems to have died down, fortunately, but for a while, I remember this. There was a phase where men, I don't know if they were scorned lovers, or I think in a couple of cases they were random victims, but they would like attack women, especially attractive women, and pour or spray or throw acid on them. And but he defended one of these victims to go after, kind of, so he's the defense attorney, but he actually served kind of as like a private prosecutor in that case to go after the victims and make sure that they face justice. Now, aside from his lawyering, he's found the time to launch his own brand of rum called Defensor, a line of wine called Fratelloni, or Fratelloni, probably Fratelloni. I think it's supposed to be Italian. And we'll get to that in a second. And a line of hats and clothes. He has released 2 musical albums, and he seems to be very fond of Italy. And according to news daily El Heraldo, he's also a citizen of both the U.S. and Italy, in addition to Colombia. I think Gustavo Petro, the current president, might have Italian citizenship as well. So De La Espriella has homes both in Colombia, of course, but also in the U.S. and Italy, according to the paper. He comes across as being very arrogant, even gross. Last week, he insulted, I mentioned this earlier, Juan Daniel Oviedo based on his sexual orientation. He kind of acts like a goofy frat boy. You can see videos where he does interviews, and he comes across really awful, but I don't even think he's self-aware enough to realize it, as kind of this, I don't know if the word is snobby or classist or whatever kind of callous guy. But he has a habit of filing slander claims against anyone who dares criticize him. He's attacked journalists. He's attacked Colombia's Foundation for a Free Press that goes by the acronym FLIP, which is a very, it's like Fundación Libertad Internacional de Prensa. I might be getting the I wrong. But it's Fundación de Libertad de Prensa. The I forget what the I means. I don't know if it's international or what it is. But is he a narcissist? I don't know. I'm not qualified to say. And a mental health professional would caution against diagnosing someone without examination. But I think it would be fair to say that he has some of the same tendencies as Donald Trump has, and De La Espriella would consider that a compliment. He's an admirer of Trump's way of doing things, or of Bukele's way of doing things. And my guess, and it is just that, is that of the 3 candidates, the 3 leading candidates, De La Espriella would be the biggest threat to institutionalism in Colombia. He claims to defend it, though the current president, with his improvisation and impulsivity, has relentlessly tried to chip away at the institutionalism, I mean. Iván Cepeda would be just as leftist as the current president, but possibly more thoughtful and methodical in his approach to things. He seems to be a very intelligent, thoughtful guy. I personally wouldn't agree with him on policy, but he's not part of the goofy crowd, okay? He's not a goofy left-wing guy who goes out and says crazy stuff like, you might say, some people might say they're current leaders who do that. Paloma Valencia, who has a long track record as a senator, would be not only Colombia's first woman president, but would also be most predictable for the business community and institutionalism generally, and would also most likely take aggressive action against the guerrillas and the mafias that have grown during the current Petro administration. So there you have it. I already did an analysis on Paloma Valencia. If you want, you can check it out here. Poof. I hope that works. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments or on our social media channels. And I want to ask you something. Aside from the usual like and subscribe, which tells the platform you want more of this, I'm asking you not to trust the algorithms, because some ornery politician, Uribe or Petro or Trump or Xi Jinping or De La Espriella, might get pissed off and pull strings to get us deplatformed. You probably have seen cases like this already where some YouTuber or podcaster just disappears. So aside from asking you to give us a like and subscribe, which helps, subscribe to our newsletter. The link's in the description or the show notes. I will never share your email. We have been in business for over a decade, and we never have shared, and we never will. We've never been hacked. So nobody's stolen your email. For Finance Colombia, just go to fcsubscribe.com. FCSubscribe, the letter F, the letter C, subscribe.com. And that's it for today. Be smart, be kind, have fun.